everyone, and welcome to this version of The Power of You, a virtual conversation with women around the world. I just wanted to share some of my beloved friends with you, my audience. And today I have a sister, a friend that I've grown to love over these last 10 or more years that I've known, Eman Kaskas. And so, Eman, welcome to The Power of You. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Dawn. It's a pleasure to be with you. I don't think I feel more comfortable being with anybody else like I do with you. I think we've been having conversation for as long as we've met, really,
Yes.
literally.
Yes.
And I think I've told you this before, but every time I walked away from our conversation, I had a warm heart, and I think today would not be any different.
Well, I am just so delighted. And I always like to start off because I know you, but I think the women and the people that will eventually watch this, I hope will get to know you as well and love you in the way that I do. So why don't we begin at the beginning? Just tell me about you. Where did you grow up? What was your family like? How did you become the wonderful, beautiful woman that you are today?
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for that for those beautiful words. I actually am Lebanese. I was born in Sidon, Lebanon. Sidon is a city on the Mediterranean coast. And most people that have read the Bible know Sidon of the Bible because Jesus walked the streets of Sidon. And I left Lebanon at the age of 16 and came to the United States. And I've lived here for many years, got married, had my children here. And then we moved to Saudi Arabia, where we lived for 30 years, my husband and I. And we just moved back to the US 2 years ago. We still travel all over the world, and we love doing that. Yes. Well, we've started attending the National Prayer Breakfast about 22 years ago, Dawn. As you know, that's through that venue is where we met. But I started attending the National Prayer Breakfast for the very first time immediately after September 11. And I'm a Muslim, and I sensed at the time that there was fear of Muslims. I sensed that my faith is targeted. I sensed that the spotlight was on us as Muslim. And I started wondering and pondering why that is, and spoke to my husband. I was alone that very first time. I spoke to my husband and explained to him what I'm sensing. And from that came a need to try to explain who we are as Muslim. The event that I'm speaking about is held under the principle and precept of Jesus. And I love that notion. Most people, I learned during that very first time, that don't realize that Muslim know Jesus and Muslim have Jesus in their holy book, in the Quran. So I found myself continuously trying to explain that to people. And I told my husband about this need, and he immediately joined on board. Not that he hadn't spent his whole life being a seeker, and said, we need to do something. And he thought about translating the Quran into easy to read English. And his first book, the Quran, A Contemporary Understanding, came out now. It's almost 10 years ago. It's amazing how time flies. And 2 years later, he came up with a second version, which is that translations with the references to the Bible. It's called the Quran with references to the Bible. All of that was a product of knowing that who we are as Muslim were targeted, and people need to know the common ground that exists between people of faith, from Judaism to Christianity to Islam. Throughout, from the beginning of time, in my opinion, the message from God is the same. It has not changed. This is my understanding of reading and internalizing, contemplating the Quran, that repeatedly God tells us that we are to uphold the faith and not fragment because of it. Yet I've learned through the years that each people or each group of people take their faith and feel that they've got the best version of God. While God is indivisible, according to the Quran, he is uniquely singular. He is one, and his message to us never changed from the time of Adam onward, all the time to Prophet Muhammad. So I wanted to talk about that. I love talking about that. There is a verse in the Quran that goes as, it's like a commandment. It begins with the word say. We believe in God, in what he revealed to us, and what he revealed to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and the teaching of Moses and Jesus and the prophets from their God. We do not differentiate between any of them, and we are all to him submissive. Dawn, here I find this so comprehensive, so inclusive. Everyone is included here. No one is left out. We're told God is commanding Prophet Muhammad to say that he believes in what was revealed to him, but not just that, to believe in what was revealed to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and Jesus. And then he's saying, and the prophets with an S. That means every other prophet that's mentioned in the Old Testament, in the Gospel, and in the Quran. And then we're told we do not differentiate between any of them. Can you imagine those
That is
words
a
from God
beautiful thing.
himself?
I us that we are better than the other. Instead,
Exactly.
the great teachers all
Yes.
come to say, love each other.
Yes.
You know,
Exactly.
love your neighbor is a universal concept of those of us that believe in the one true God. And so I think it's really, people make a mistake when they don't see that. But
Yes.
so tell me, how did you come to this? When you were a child, is that how you were taught, or is this something that was revealed to you only after 9/11 and becoming active in the National Prayer Breakfast in Washington, D.C.?
When I was a child, I was raised as a traditional Muslim. This is how I was born. This is how I was raised. My family loved God. My mother and father prayed 5 times a day. I watched them go. I watched my father go to the mosque regularly, and fasted during the month of Ramadan. I know you're familiar because you had a Muslim brother. May God rest his soul. And
Amen.
I just lived my life as a traditional Muslim. There is a difference, Dawn, between a traditional Muslim that's raised culturally and a practicing Muslim who reads the Quran and internalizes it, and it makes it become a way of life. In a similar way, following Jesus is a way of life. There is a difference in my mind between Christianity and between actually following Jesus. And that's what I learned, and that's what came to be.
Well, I want you to elaborate on that, because that is the reason I'm doing this. You can see from my background, I'm already decorated for Christmas. We're recording this conversation during the Christmas season, which to me is the holiest of times for believers and followers of Jesus. And so I appreciate that you're bringing out for me the true reason for this season. So don't assume that anyone already knows. Just tell me in your own way why you've chosen to make this distinction between, being a practicing Muslim, for example, and being a follower of Jesus, as opposed to being, a religious person in a traditional way.
It's been a long journey, Dawn. And so I always feel like I need to start from the beginning to explain why my interest came to be. Again, I was in that very first time of attending the National Prayer Breakfast, I was supposed to go and attend a dinner that included congressmen and senators because as an American, I wear several hats. I'm a Lebanese-American. As an American, I was placed or positioned in this dinner so I can meet my congressmen and senators. But I had some friends from Lebanon with me, and I wanted to be with them. They were in a different dinner. They were in a business dinner. So I asked that I would be included with them, and I went to that dinner. The moment I walked into this dinner, there was only one seat available. So I sat next to this gentleman who asked me to introduce myself as soon as I got in. I said, my name is Eman Kaskas. I'm a Lebanese-American. I live in Saudi Arabia. He said, are you a Muslim? I said, yes, I'm a Muslim. He said, did you hear the speech today about Jesus and Islam? I said, yes. He said, did you believe what the man said? I said, of course I do. I can't consider myself a Muslim unless I believe it. He didn't know, literally, that I actually helped prepare that speech for the person that read it. Then he said something that started this spiraling of ideas and thought that were to dwell in my head for many days to come, months, years, actually. Then he said, but Muslim in my country kill Christian and burn churches. I was taken aback because he had introduced himself as Indonesian. And immediately when you hear somebody say, I'm from Indonesia, you assume he's a Muslim because it's a Muslim majority country. So I was thrown. It turned out he's from a Christian minority in Indonesia, and apparently he's had some problems. And then I said to him, after pausing for a minute, I said, they must be cultural Muslim and don't really know Islam like I do. But it was precisely at that moment that I understood the spirit of the gathering that I was in, understood what it means for these people to follow Jesus and to the idea of Jesus plus nothing. That was enormous. I had heard that again and again and again, Jesus plus nothing. That means Jesus and no doctrine, no interference, pure Jesus, pure thought. I began to research this, and I understood that the person who dreams this idea of the National Prayer Breakfast, who loves to talk about Jesus and who tells you Jesus is the answer to everything, he knew what he was talking about. Yes. So in order to be true to myself, I had to research what and who Jesus is in the Quran. And I began to find tremendous common ground, Dawn. It was unbelievable. I even found things that were not in the gospel. I read the gospel completely. I understood all the teaching of Jesus. And I even had bought a book called Jesus and Muhammad, the Parallel Saying, and found that they were with the same spirit, that there is nothing contradiction. In order for clarity purpose, I need to explain that there are changes in what was said about Jesus after Jesus was with us. But the person of Jesus never contradicted any of my belief. In order to be true to my family, to my upbringing, to who I am, I had to go deep into this and to know. And the more I did, Dawn, the more I found common ground with Jesus. And this stirred the need to translate the Quran, to point out the common ground, and to show what the Quran says in easy to read English. And later on, the second version, which is really the ultimate product of this whole journey, and it is the Quran with references to the Bible, to show the common ground. And we found over 3,000 verse that said that it's similar. And there's even some miracle that are not in the gospel. Like there is one where Jesus picks a little bit of clay from the ground and he fashions it like a bird and he blows on it and it flew. It became a bird. And so
Oh, what a
that's
beautiful
that's
story. He created
Dawn, this is
life.
yes, yes, this is something that is not in the gospel, yet it's in the Quran. So there were a lot of things that the more I read and the more I learned about him, the more I loved him. And I too am extremely grateful that we are doing this interview during this time of the year because it's so pertinent to his creation, that Muslim also believe that he is a miracle, that he is the word, and he is the spirit of God. Not only that, we believe he was supported by the Holy Spirit throughout his life. Now, I say this, and I need to clarify that unfortunately, the majority of Muslim, when they hear Jesus, they think Christianity. And
Yes.
automatically,
I'm so
it's
glad
like,
you're going because I want you to elaborate on how
yeah.
people are demonized as Muslim as if they are non-believers.
Yes, yes. And I think it's very important that we highlight this because I don't want your listener or your viewers to think I am romanticizing this idea and that every Muslim feels this way. I think every Muslim need to do their own homework and to go on their journey to learn who Jesus is. I do my work by everywhere I go, everywhere I meet with people, especially people from my part of the world. I put spotlight, I put a focus on this so I can start them to think. And sure enough, Don, initially when I say what I have, my message, sometime I met with question marks, even with rejection. But believe me when I say 9 times out of 10, the same people come back and say, Eman, what you were saying, now that we're hearing what we're reading in the Quran, you're right. Why is that, Don? Because we have tendency, especially because the Quran flows so beautifully, when you hear it, it's almost like musical. And even since when it's heard through people with beautiful sound, you're enchanted with it. And the words in it are very, very powerful, extremely powerful. So people tend to memorize, to hear, but because repetitively sometimes they're hearing it, they don't really fully comprehend. And believe it or not, many people love it, even though they don't speak the Arabic language, they don't understand. They memorize but don't
I love to
understand.
hear the call, especially a
Yes,
skilled person doing the call. I love that. It
absolutely.
has to be God because
It's
the
absolutely.
feeling that you feel is so powerful. Yes.
It is. It is unbelievable, and there are so many people that are amazing. They're given a gift of their sound. So anyway, I wanted people to stop
Mhm,
and think about these verses that include Jesus in them. And they were many. I
mhm.
mean, when I usually don't like to compare, but Jesus is mentioned over 100 times in the Quran in different ways. I don't know the exact number. I hear people saying different number, but uh, he's known as the Son of Mary. He's known as the Messiah. He's known as the Son of Man. So many different ways are referred to Jesus. Yet we go over it and we don't stop and think, why is God repeating this so much in a book that understood to be the book for Muslim? See, personally, I don't think the Quran is a book for Muslim. I think a Quran is a book for a believer because
Amen.
it encompasses everyone. It includes
Just
Judaism. It
like
includes Moses.
Jesus is not, he didn't come to create Christianity.
Exactly.
Jesus came
Exactly.
to birth love, to create a
Absolutely.
revolution of love.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, so to me, Jesus was the miracle. The Quran says that his birth was a miracle, his existence was a miracle. And so while other prophets were created normally, I equate Jesus, because he is the word and the spirit of God, to the Quran, which is the word of God. So they're both the miracle. And so to me, they are both, because he is the word of God and the Quran is the word of God, they're equal in status. And that's a high, very high pedestal,
Do you
Dawn.
meet with a lot of opposition to this idea? You and Safi travel. How do people respond when you say something that radical?
Believe it or not, because we come from the Quranic perspective, they don't, because we are supporting what we're saying, Dawn. We've had some rejection here in this country, because some people, but not that much, believe it or not, not that much, but people, because we're living in an era where people are anti others, and there is a lot of hatred that is erupting, and people just want to reject anything that is Muslim or Islamic before they get to know what that
Yes,
is. Our
yes,
job is to make them understand that we believe in the same God of Adam, of Abraham, of Jesus, and is Muhammad. They are not different. Most people assume when we say, for example, Allah, that we're talking about a different deity than the one that created Jesus. I found that it is extremely important to explain that the God of Jesus is the God of Muhammad. That he, for example, I'll give you an example of Jesus when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and he was pleading with his creator to spare him that cup that he's about to have. He said Allah, and that's the Aramaic version of the word Allah. And the majority of people don't know that Christian in my country, when they are praying, they pray to Allah
to Allah.
and
It
they
means
say
God.
Allah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Same in Hebrew, same in Aramaic. So it's just we sometimes choose to focus on the differences and not the common grounds.
So the rejection, if I could just dwell on that difficult piece a little bit, is not so much from Muslims hearing what you have to say about Jesus, but it's more from Christians um, accepting you as a Muslim that is a follower of Jesus. Is this true? Is that what you were saying?
Yes. Yes, to a certain extent, many do. When I share that verse, Dawn, that I shared earlier with you, which is inclusive, we're commanded to say that we all believe in all these messages that came through the prophet and that God doesn't differentiate between any of us. Every time I share this verse, I've had people who hang on to me, wanting to know more, and ask me about the reference for that verse, because it shows that God includes us all under the same umbrella. The Quran said, we have honored the children of Adam. He threw a blanket statement on the children of Adam, on everybody. Nobody is excluded. And that's, in my opinion, how I feel the Quran is. People don't want to hear this sometimes. People want the alienation, where an alienation is the opposite of reconciliation. So our job is to highlight, and I do this for both Christian friends and Muslim friends, to help them understand that we are all from the same creator and going back to him. And he loves us all equally. He doesn't differentiate between of us. He honored all of us. I have to say 9 times out of 10, I get positive response, but there's always somebody, Don, that insists on his way of dogma, his way of cultural understanding. You know, the sediment piles up with all of us. We're all products of our upbringing, of our environment. And it takes time and it takes a will, like what happened to me during that first national prayer breakfast, where I heard this man telling me that in his country, Muslim kill Christian and burn churches. I had to understand how to answer him, and I said they must be cultural Muslim and don't really understand Islam like I do. But then I began to think about it, and how do Muslim understand, and why do they understand it differently? And we started addressing this issue, and then we thought we need to put clarification on these verses, and we need to expose them, and we need to put Jesus up there to show him as a common denominator for all of us, that we can both rally around him and feel loved by him, and teach one another what it means to really be a follower of Jesus, because I don't think he would
I
like it
I
if we
often
hated each
tell
other.
I often tell Christian friends of mine, and I think they don't believe me, that I learned more about Jesus from a Muslim friend of mine. And talking about you, I said I have learned more about Jesus from a Muslim friend of mine than I've learned from many pastors. And people are surprised when I say that, but truly, as you know, some of our conversations have gone so deep as to really cause me to ponder what what is Jesus really? Who is Jesus? And I'm being very honest when I say I've learned so much about Jesus from talking to you, born a Muslim. But what I want to talk about now, and we'll get back
Thank
to the
you.
Jesus piece because that is the common denominator here. But tell me about being Lebanese. I grew up around Lebanese people in Liberia. We have a
Mhm.
Haitian friend. You and I have a sister, Danielle. She grew up in Haiti.
Mhm.
They were Lebanese. Um,
Mhm.
there, there are family members that are intermarried with Lebanese. So how come they're just Lebanese people everywhere in the world that you go? How did that come to be? Tell us your history a little bit.
Lebanese breed is very, very unique, in my opinion. Lebanese love life, love to live it, and love to enjoy it, and are doers. They are hard workers and they excel in wherever they go. Unfortunately, in Lebanon, we have had so many problems and so many issues, and we continue to. Lebanese abroad that you're talking about that are scattered pretty much all over the world, Don. The truth is, in Lebanon, we're about 3 millions, but in diaspora, we're almost 19 million.
Wow.
And it is those Lebanese that are in diaspora that are saving Lebanon currently. I think without these Lebanese, probably a true, real famine would have taken hold in Lebanon. But the reality is, after the Lebanese pound lost its value, and many Lebanese people lost their money in banks, the banking system pretty much collapsed. Uh, they these people relied on their family abroad, and they are continuously helping their family by sending money to help them cope with the current situation. The inflation, the Lebanese pound went from being officially 1,500 Lebanese pound per dollar into being over 40,000 right now. So you can imagine the inflation and what has happened, and you can imagine how people lost their livelihood and their salary that used to be, for example, $1,000 and became $50 overnight.
Oh my
They
goodness.
have had to rely on the Lebanese diaspora that are in Liberia, that are in Haiti, that are even in islands in the Dominican Republic, and many other parts of
South
the world.
Americans, there are many even famous South Americans that are actually of
Absolutely.
Lebanese descent, like Salma Hayek, the beautiful actress. She's
Yes.
Lebanese, and I'm always finding
Mhm.
out that someone is Lebanese that is from some other part of the world. So they enjoy like a dual citizenship. But uh, are people leaving
Many have
Lebanon?
become even politicians.
Oh, yes. Are people leaving Lebanon because of problems, or is it just cultural that they travel and they're traders? Or is it a combination?
Initially, people, or historically, people left Lebanon because they needed to do something for themselves and make it better. Because of the limited economic opportunities in Lebanon, people left, and they did well and always came back. All never left really their roots, never continuously departed from Lebanon. And they spread all over the world and continue to help. But truly, truly, I think today we give them all the they actually are the one that's keeping Lebanon alive at this time. But Lebanese in general are achievers. They excel. And because we have limited opportunity, many, however, came back. Many we have, like our numbers of doctors is so high. But unfortunately, right now, because of the situation, they're all leaving. Yet you hear that some people are even coming back at this difficult time, where we know people are not able to make ends meet because the pay scale have deteriorated so bad. So they are not doing well, but yet their loyalty to Lebanon remains. These people that are in diaspora are in Lebanon every summer, even under the current condition. They come back and they visit and they spend money, and that is what's keeping the wheel turning somehow.
I agree with you when you say
It's
that Lebanese really never leave Lebanon, because even
Mhm.
when they are resident in Liberia for multiple generations and they identify with the Liberian people, they have their own community and they
Yes,
have their own food and they have their own culture. And to a large extent, their culture influences the culture that they're living in. Because as I
yes.
told you, I grew up eating Lebanese food and enjoying it. And so the culture they bring with them, and so they may integrate with the population, but they remain true to their identity as Lebanese people. So,
And
so
the food is great.
that, oh my goodness, you know all about that. I love the food. So, but what I want to know from you is, tell me about the relationship of Lebanese people with the rest of the Middle East, between your culture, your specifically your Lebanese culture, but I see you interacting with Saudis, with Palestinians, and it's kind of one culture, isn't it, in some ways?
Yes, it
Yes, it
is,
is.
Don. It used to be actually, historically, that whole area used to be one, and it used to be called the Great Syria. So Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan were all under the same umbrella.
Oh,
Uh,
let me interrupt you 1 second. So this explains that my grandmother was not wrong. She called everybody Syrian. And I used to
that's
say, but
true.
no, they're not Syrian. They're not from Syria. They're Lebanese. She's like, they're all Syrians. So she knew this. And that's why. Okay, I
Yes,
did not realize
yes,
that.
yes.
Okay, uh-huh.
Most people that left Lebanon uh, in like maybe 100 years ago and
Mm-hmm,
established themselves in different parts of the world actually left Syria, and they called it Syria.
mm-hmm,
And at that time it was all called Surya al-Kubra, which is the great Syria.
mm-hmm.
That's why a certain generation always called it Syria and not Lebanon. Yes, that's absolutely true.
Yes, I
Yes.
grew up hearing that
And
these were
and
Syrian people. Mm-hmm,
and the food is shared. We have a lot of things in common. Since the geographical separation and Palestine becoming Palestine and Lebanon and Syria, each one developed their own cuisine, and it has something different than the one that was originally common. But even in Lebanon right now, which is a small country, even
mm-hmm.
in Lebanon, if you go to the south as opposed to the north, you'll find some differences. but it's all amazing and it's all delicious and it's all great.
So I
And
want to, uh-huh,
I
go
too,
ahead.
Dawn, we lived, my husband and I lived in Saudi Arabia for 30 years. 2 years ago, right before COVID, as we were about to leave Saudi Arabia, our intention was to live 6 months in Lebanon and 6 months here in Northern Virginia. Unfortunately, because of the situation in Lebanon and the collapse and all of that, I had just shipped my furniture there. It's still sitting in containers waiting for me to go. And I am having difficulty making this decision to return, but eventually we will because we love it.
Yes, you love your
I
country.
do feel I belong to the best of two worlds because I carry my culture wherever I go, and I do interact with others easily. It could be because of all this exposure
Because of
to
your
variety.
education and
Yes,
the way you have, yeah. Because you left
absolutely.
Lebanon, you said at 16. So
Yes, yes.
tell me now, we're gonna just go back to the personal. I have really picked your brain today because I think those who listen will learn so much about the history, about Jesus, about what it is to be Muslim, what it is to be a follower of Jesus, and what it is to be Lebanese and part of what was formerly all of Syria. But
Yeah.
what I want now is the personal. You, Eman, are amazingly successful. How do you juggle being a fairly traditional wife, mother, Muslim daughter? I know how you care about your mother, your sisters, your extended family. I know this. But tell us, what is it like to be a woman who's achieving all of this and yet obviously very, very well educated, very, very successful as a businesswoman? Tell us about your personal journey. You, Eman, how have you balanced being the traditional mother, wife, family, and being a professional?
Dawn, I think it's called love.
Love.
I think it's called love. More than anything else, it's love. It's wanting to give of yourself. It's wanting to live the principle that you are committed to. It's wanting to share. You know, I was taught by someone I really love and trust one time is the best gift you can give others is sharing your friend and visiting them and
Yes,
having fellowship with
yes,
them.
yes.
This three combination is amazing. I have found through testing these thoughts, this idea of going to visit others, of loving them, fellowshipping with them, praying together, how it deepens the relationship and how it helps it grow. And I just love to share my friends and to talk about this subject that you saw earlier. So I speak so passionately about and the common ground. And I think it's enriching. I
But
think doing that
you have
is,
operated businesses, and I think your worldview, your love of your fellow humans, it permeates everything you do. But you've been a businesswoman, and how have your businesses worked? How have you succeeded as a businesswoman, for example? Tell us a little bit about some
yes,
of
yes.
your
I Okay. In Saudi Arabia, I ran a diagnostic imaging center. We owned and operated a diagnostic imaging center. And when I when I took over running it, it was under a different manager for the first 5 years. When I took over running it, I decided to change the culture in the office. And because everyone over there is Muslim that was running it, I wanted to use certain principle that they understood. So immediately when I had a meeting, I said, I operate under two principles. The first one is the saying of Prophet Muhammad, you do not believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself, which you know as the golden rule. And the other one, which I shared with you earlier, we have honored the children of Adam. And God here threw a blanket statement on all believers. So everyone that walk through the door in our establishment needs to be treated like an equal. And that actually, Don, made a big difference. And whenever I saw deviation of this principle, I would remind them until it became the culture of the office. I am extremely proud of this. See, to me, knowing the principle, it's not just to talk about it when we sit and we are going through like a Sunday school situation of learning these principles and then tucking them in our head and forgetting about them when we're out in the world. We need to live them. They're principles that need to be lived. And so for me, it really made a difference in the work place. It's not like we didn't meet with a lot of difficulties. We did, and we try to resolve them just like any other office situation. But I truly feel the culture that I helped in the workplace was
Made a
really
difference.
internalized and made a difference with everyone. I could see the difference.
So in addition to running your business in a very professional and smart way, you infuse it with your faith, with your beliefs, and you encourage your fellow staff and everybody that's working with you to treat each other with respect and love, and that is the secret. The secret ingredient is always love. I understand that. I'm going to ask you this, Eman. You've always been very glamorous since I've known you. I've always seen your beautiful hair, your makeup. And I think if I passed you on the street, I might not know that you were a Muslim, because many Muslim women nowadays choose to cover the hijab. So talk to me about the choice that you made not to cover, and your feelings about this cosmetic thing, because it comes up a lot in the
All the
world, where
time.
people,
All the time.
especially non-Muslims, don't understand what it means.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. It is, I'm asked that quite often. Even when my husband put our pictures on Facebook, he's often criticized because his wife is not covered. And I have in the past, way long ago, I have in the past attempted to cover my hair, but I never felt, and when I say this, I need to first explain that I respect women that do very much, Don. I think it is their right to be pious, to cover their hair, to believe that this is what their religion tells them. And since it shows piety and it's their understanding of their religion, who am I to disagree? But I personally did not see it clearly stated in the Quran. And when I say this, I know some Muslim will be upset with me and they'll want to say, use one verse or another, but I personally don't see it clearly. In many ways, this was told to Prophet Muhammad to have his wives covered because for protection. You know how the First Lady now in our time sits in a dark limousine and she has several cars behind her that are all protecting her and all of that. The cover back then was so the prophet's wives would be protected. I did not see it as something that I need to do. And I'm extremely comfortable with my decision. But again, I have to reiterate the level of respect that I have seen women do it, not just from the Muslim faith, but also from the Jewish faith. Many women choose to cover their hair because they believe this is what their scriptures tells them, and they're free to choose, just like I am free to choose also.
I think it shows courage both ways. I think
Yeah.
women who choose to cover are very courageous, especially knowing that in the culture that we live in, their covering is going to immediately identify them with a religion that some people look down on. On the other hand, a Muslim woman who chooses not to cover, especially a woman like yourself whose husband is engaged in the community, um, she is very courageous to do that because she is able to say, I am an individual, I am responsible for me, I don't have to conform to what people think I should look like because my husband is a teacher of the Quran. So yeah, so I think it takes courage both ways, and thank you so much for clarifying that. In terms of parenting, talk to me about some of the things that you would share with other women that are trying to be good mothers. What do you think that your children have been amazingly successful? Each one of them, I've heard about how well they're doing, and your grandchildren. And tell us what do you think is the role of a mother in shaping how our children should become?
Yeah. One of the best thing I'm proud of as far as accomplishment is concerned, Don, is being a mother and a grandmother. Whenever I'm introduced at event and I'm to speak and people would ask me, how would you like us to introduce you? I always say, I'm a mother and a grandmother first. And then these other things that we like to give ourselves, these titles. But this to me is the most important thing. And I have shared with you something else, that I have learned so much from my children and my grandchildren, believe it or not, at very, very early age. I have learned so much from them, and I continue to be in tune to their likes and dislikes and needs, and try to implement this way of loving others and loving God with them. I think it's crucial. It will make a huge difference in their future, and it will make their life better. It's not always easy to make yourself available. As you know, we have so many things that we are responsible for and to, but I try to find the time. I really do try to find the time, and I travel to see my family as much as I can. And it's always a blessing to be together.
So the
Always.
critical ingredient, in addition to love, is time.
Absolutely.
Not so much the giving of physical gifts, but the time that you spend
As
engaged.
precious, time is as precious as the relationship itself, because you need it in order to fulfill and nurture this relationship, without a doubt.
Wonderful. So we're going to come full circle. You've taught us a lot. And as we sort of wrap up our conversation, what I want you to share with me is what are the most powerful lessons that you feel that the gospel, that the life of Jesus has shown you, and you can weave that into what the Quran has also shown you. What are the most powerful lessons that we can leave with our listeners about the person of Jesus?
Yes. Don, as Jesus taught in parable, I'm going to give you a story that happened to me that led me to understand what it is to love one's enemy. I always felt that this was a very powerful moment in my life. And loving one's enemy is not a cultural practice in my neck of the wood, as they say, in my background. Uh, uh, people tend to hold grudges at time, and not just in my part of the world. I think that's the case anywhere, unless you're a believer. On the very day of September 11, I was asked to join a prayer circle in Arlington. And I decided, even though everyone was so afraid, people didn't leave their homes on that day, I decided to take my two boys, whom were supposed to be going to George Mason University, and I was soon to go to Saudi Arabia. So I was concerned because their names are Omar and Yasser. So their names, even though they were born in New Orleans, Louisiana, but their names were indicative of who they are. So I decided to leave my home on that today and take them with me to this prayer visual. And as we sat in a circle in this home and prayed for our country, prayed for our leader in Washington, D.C., prayed for President Bush at the time, prayed for John Ashcroft and all the leaders on the Hill, someone in the audience said, I pray for Osama bin Laden. I was so struck that day and I was in tears, literally in tears, that I could not stop. That we are in this difficult situation, and yet this group chose to pray for their enemy. And I remember as I left home to go home that day, driving on 66 with my boys in the car, thinking about this. The roads were empty. It was scary. No one is out. People didn't know what's to happen the next day. And I'm thinking, what did I just experience? How can someone love and pray for their enemy like they did? And I remember calling my husband because he was in Saudi Arabia while I was here and telling him, you're not going to believe what I just experienced, and said to him, these people actually prayed for their enemy. And that set the tone for us, Dawn, to continue to do this research that was to come. This was prior to experiencing what I experienced during the very first National Prayer Breakfast. But that incident really set the tone. And when we tried to research to see if the Quran has the notion of loving one's enemy, we found a verse that says, push with what is better until the person that you have trouble with or who is your enemy becomes like an intimate friend. So we're actually encouraged to keep loving until we become intimate with our enemy. That is something that is not practiced. But when you start being aware of it and you start wanting to retaliate and love, and instead of hating, you love, becomes almost like second nature. And believe me when I say I have felt that. It was difficult, but it becomes easier and you learn how to do it. And our group of sisters that you and I are part of is a testament, is a true testament to this notion. The way we love each other and the way we have stuck together right now for, I don't know, almost 12, 13 years. And we continue to pray together and to look for ways to be closer to the Lord and to live our principle. This never took me away from my faith, Dawn. I continue to be a Muslim. I continue to live the principle of being a Muslim. Yet I've added the awareness and the following of Jesus to it. And it's an unbeatable combination. I'm very honored and very proud and privileged to have had the journey in the path that I've lived that led me to this and that gave me as a reward the relationships I have all over the world. I truly believe I couldn't have done it if I was the person that I continue to be that I was before. I think learning how to maneuver and how to chart your life moving forward by not being judgmental, by being loving, really is transformational.
And I thank you for coming on at this very, very busy time of the year. And this is just a small spotlight on this sisterhood journey that we've been on. And so thank you so much for sharing with the power of you what it is to be the successful, beautiful woman, mother, wife, scholar, businesswoman that you've been all these years. Thank you so much. Any final words that you have?
Just I like to thank you, Dawn, very much. I love and value our relationship tremendously. I am so much richer and wealthier because of it. I like to thank you for thinking of me and for including me. And I do hope that whatever I shared is understood by your viewer to mean or to be similar to the love of God that he has for us, to be to make us feel like we are in this journey all together. I truly thought during COVID that this is the greatest lesson that I learned, that when something so minute, so small, caused us all to become paralyzed and to make us stay still and not be able to move, I think we needed to stay still and know He is God, and
Amen.
know that it is all in His hands, that He gave us freedom to choose Him. The freedom is not to move away from Him, but to choose Him and to know that He is in control. I think this is probably the greatest lesson that I learned in the last couple of years. And I'm hoping that I live up to His expectation.
You are definitely doing that. I have no doubt about it. This is the first time I've had a conversation with a woman on the Power of You, expressly about God and about faith. And I think I could not have had this conversation with a better person. And so thank you. Much love to you this holiday season. Much love to you in your life and your family. God bless.
God
Bye.
bless. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.